The Holy Mountain is a grandiose explosion of color, meaning, and meta-contextual expression. It is a doozy. With this series, we will try our best to make sense of the dense visual casuistry that you find within. It is our hope that by the end of these videos, you're left with an honest sense of contentment and wonder. With a styled combination of quippy humor, pretentious lecturing, and amateur production skills, the folks at bEATTY hope to dispel myths, to open your eyes, fill in the gaps, and to be a companion along the journey of this Jodorowskian rainbow. Okay, let's do part 1. A mountain, but not just any mountain, the Holy Mountain. Now, that is the name of this film, but also it's an interesting little motif that we find in all sorts of world religions and philosophies and could be the basis for human enlightenment. Now, stay with me here. We could call it the axis mundi, the cosmic axis, the tree of life, or the Holy Mountain. In simple terms, the cosmic axis is the connection between heaven and earth, or even extends all the way down to the underworld. Famous examples include Jacob's Ladder, Jack and the Beanstalk, the Kunlun Shan, the Banyan Tree, Yggdrasil, Uluru, Teotihuacan, Mount Olympus, Mount Sinai, the Cross, and even the North Pole. To briefly summarize, someone that traverses this connection is on their way to leveling up. This is a very large subject, so if you want to read more about it, here are some suggestions. In this book, and this book, and this book, this guy explains that people are not just talking about myths, but continually participate them either consciously or unconsciously. Now, you might view the film The Holy Mountain as a quirky smorgasbord, but you might actually be participating in some part of it right now. The film even ends with the director himself telling the audience to go and act out the film in their own life. Right, so let's talk about the film. Now, if you haven't seen it, The Holy Mountain is kind of insane. It's also quite genius. Reactions to the film vary wildly. I asked a few friends to comment on the film, and this is what they said.
I'd call it eccentric. I had an entertaining time, it was a slew of psychedelic gobbledygook, and it pops in my head almost every day.
What an odd and disgusting film that I probably will never watch again.
Holy Mountain? That movie? Oh, I thought it was very interesting. Yeah, there was Potato Jesus and the robot sex scene and I just wow. It was wow, if you ask me. Wow.
Still, you should watch it if you get the chance. Now, the promotions for the film might come off as a bit pompous. They state, The Holy Mountain is a film completely outside the tradition of motion picture art.
The Holy Mountain is a film completely outside the entire tradition of motion picture art.
It is outside the tradition of modern theater.
Outside the tradition of modern theater.
The Holy Mountain is a film outside the tradition of criticism and review.
Outside the tradition of criticism and review.
And they might be right. The Holy Mountain is one of the most dense films you might ever watch. Frames that are jam-packed with so much iconography and symbolism, creative expression, exploitation, paganism, mandala, allegory, metaphor, words, thesaurus. And it's not just smut or torture. It's not a film where you're just watching people in agony. It's not a clumsy allegory for capitalism or environmentalism. It's an allegory for the real Shinola. It asks the question, what can you do in this immediate moment to keep journeying up the holy mountain? No one sees this film and understands everything that's in front of them. The holy mountain shames you for your lack of knowledge, your shortcomings when it comes to history, literature, art, philosophy, your lack of social connections, your lack of artistic creations. There's just so much there. Featuring such hits as horned lizards recreating the downfall of the Aztec Empire at the hands of the conquistadors, eating the face of sweet potato Jesus, turning actual shit into gold, mechanical lady parts, a clown war propagandist, small knitted scarf for a very large snake, ritualistic cutting off of junk, burning mannequins, mountainside excursions, a woman getting busy with said holy mountain, and of course the Pantheon Bar.
The Pantheon Bar!
There's just so much in here, it'll make your head spin. Now the message of the film and what it's trying to say in so many words is fairly straightforward. It's the enduring gesture towards the great, the finger pointing at the moon. It is all about the spiritual quest for enlightenment, as Jodorowsky puts it, the forever quarrel between illusion and truth. It does beg the question though, how did this actually get made? Who was able to organize all this? Another question is, why is there a hippo in the bath? Like that's a real hippo. Is there a symbolic meaning there? Who procured the hippo? Was it an easy phone call? If a hippo is in the water and then you get in the water as well, how much danger are you actually in? So far, my research hasn't turned up many answers. So, who made this film? Enter one Alejandro Jodorowsky. He is the primary momentum behind this film. Jodorowsky is someone that rides the line between genius and insanity, and oftentimes between artist and con man. Jodorowsky is a man with a very colorful past. As he said himself, my parents were Russian. I was born in Iquique, a small town in Chile. I lived in the desert for 10 years. The children didn't accept me because I was Russian. I moved to Santiago, where I studied philosophy and psychology. I worked as a circus clown. I acted in several plays and formed my own marionette theater. I created a theater of mime. I lived in Santiago for 10 years. The young men did not accept me because I was a Jew. I went to Europe. I lived in Paris for 10 years. The French did not accept me because I was Chilean. I moved to Mexico where I directed 100 plays. The Mexicans didn't accept me because I was French. Now I live in the United States where I'm finishing my film The Holy Mountain. The Americans think I'm Mexican. After 10 years, I'll move to another planet, and they won't accept me because they think I'm American. Fascinating stuff. Jodorowsky was born from what you might call a brutal conception. An abusive father and resentful mother, neither of which planned for his actual existence and seemed to have really taken out their frustrations on him. From the sound of it, it probably was a rough time. He did enjoy his local area though. An outcast in the land because of his complexion and heritage, the boys would call him Pinocchio because of his light skin and big nose.
First, I was the only child in Tocopilla who have circumcision. I have a mushroom, and the other have like something like that. And that was terrible. And then I suffered for the masturbation because I don't have excuse me.
He found it easier to mingle with the outcasts of the city. Many of these people eventually find their way into his films. He stated that he was able to instantly learn to read after a wonderful teacher taught him how letters work. He's an avid enthusiast of the tarot card system. You actually see that a lot in the Holy Mountain. He also invented his own form of philosophy and therapy called psychomagic. Now, as far as his film career goes, Jodorowsky directed his first feature in 1967, the absurd and surreal Fin de Liz. The film caused an actual riot at the 1968 Acapulco Film Festival. After that uproar, Jodorowsky decided that Mexico was not the market for him. His next film is the psychedelic western El Topo, featuring himself as the hero. Very simple environments, limited characters, the film gets by on its sheer quirkiness. From Fin de Liz, the symbolism and meaning of the film is a bit easier to digest. I do mean just a bit. There is a scene in which he digs up some eggs from under a woman he's about to violate. Make of that what you will. Jodorowsky really wanted to sell that movie to the US. During the promotions for El Topo, he would say just about anything to generate buzz, even going as far as claiming that the rape scene within the movie actually did happen. "40 years later, he got a bit of the Me Too action for that one. As you should remember, Jodorowsky played the main character performing this rape. And there he is explaining to reporters that yes, he really did rape a woman in the film that he just made. A very ballsy man, though it's not unheard of in the movie industry. They did something similar with Cannibal Holocaust. Jodorowsky then had to explain that no, the actress was not actually violated. The scene took hours to set up and shoot, a whole crew was there. The only things that were filmed was a woman having her clothes ripped off, followed by close-up shots of a woman's face in agony, even though Jodorowsky still gets flack for that today. After the success of The Holy Mountain, he was slated to direct the first Dune adaptation. That fell apart and eventually was picked up by David Lynch. You can still catch a glimpse of what could have been in the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune. That one's pretty good. He went on to write the Inkle series. Pick that one up, it's fantastic. He also performed his own psychomagical therapy in Paris for decades. He has had a wild career, with The Holy Mountain being the most well-known work. But how did this actually get made? Well, Jodorowsky was not exactly an unknown figure. His previous film El Topo had made a bit of waves. Mexico even submitted the film for an Academy Award nomination. It did not get accepted. The success of El Topo allowed him to get noticed by the Beatles. The Beatles themselves had ventured into film production with their studio, Apple Films. We're talking about this Apple and not that Apple. Yeah, Steve Jobs might have stolen that idea. You see, John Lennon and Yoko Ono actually wanted to provide funding, with George Harrison wanting to play the main character. But there was one condition. George Harrison was not going to show his bare asshole on camera. Jodorowsky refused to change the film, and George Harrison left the production. To be fair, at this point, Jodorowsky admits that he should have changed the scene and had at least one Beatle in his movie. Much of the funding also came from Beatles manager Alan Klein. You might know Alan Klein as the guy who Paul McCartney described as, "Oi, oi, oi, this is no good." The production value is about what you'd expect from a low-budget Mexican film shot in Mexico. The ADR is laughably bad and almost seems deliberate.
Begin the operations of the gas chambers, gas schools, gas universities, gas libraries, gas museums, gas dance halls, and gas whorehouses, etc.
The motion of the camera lacks any fluidity that major productions have with their $1.2 million tracking cranes. Look at that bad boy. You can feel the crew behind the camera moving it around. Much of the film is also filled with unpaid extras, ordinary citizens that were willing to be part of the production. These ladies really were ladies of the night. This woman was just some lady that walked up to the crew and said that she could do magic, so they put her in the film. With a small budget, you also don't have much money for stunts. Take this helicopter landing in the middle of the city. In no way did Jodorowsky have permission for this. What he did was he got people to dress up as police and move everyone back, and then quickly had the helicopter land and take off to get the hell out of there. The lead of the film was also somewhat of an addict. He would disappear for hours, high on whatever was floating around the set, and he would also put himself in very dangerous situations while high. Look at that little guy. And all that religious imagery? Well, Catholicism is actually quite big in Mexico, and the people certainly did not like Jodorowsky playing around with the image of Christ or the church. He was even warned by higher-ups in the country that if he didn't cut certain parts of the film, he might wind up dead. Jodorowsky left for America immediately after that. And the rest is history. But wait, there's more. Remember the Beatles manager Alan Klein? Because of contract disputes, Klein barred the film from getting a wide release for more than 30 years. The only way to watch it was either find a bootleg or get a copy of the Japanese Laserdisc. But it still found a way to leave its mark. The Holy Mountain is a film that seems to lurk in the shadows. It does live on in its influence all over the world like some kind of hallucinogenic Wizard of Oz. If you look for references and homages, you're gonna find them. So, my friends, if there are any pieces in this mortal world worthy of exploration, this certainly is one of them. Within this series, we will break down the walls of misconception and illuminate the beauty in the world of the Holy Mountain. Stay tuned for part 2 as we focus in on the peaks and valleys of symbolism, delve through what really matters, to hone in on the real goodness, to sharpen our understanding, to achieve a state of relaxation and simplicity, to reach levels of clarity
that one truly deserves to find out what really happened in our history, to unmask the lizard controllers, to go beyond the ice wall